If you're somewhere near 50 and everything in your life suddenly feels like it's asking to be re examined, you are not having a crisis. You are having a return. Society gave it the wrong name: the midlife crisis, the red sports car, the desperate grab at youth. But there is an older story about a being who carried an incurable wound and discovered at the end of the carrying that the wound had been the gift all along. If you were born between 1968 and 1984, this is specifically about you. And by the end, you'll know exactly which wound is yours and why it was never what you thought it was. But first, you need to hear the story, because at 50, you're living it. In the long ago, when God still walked among mortals, Cronus, Saturn, the god of time himself, took the form of a stallion and pursued the sea nymph Philyra. From that union a child was born, half god, half horse. His mother looked at him once and abandoned him. His father, time itself, never claimed him at all. His name was Chiron, and before he ever chose anything, did anything, was anything, he was wounded. That is the first secret of this story. The first wound is never our fault. It arrives with us. The abandoned one was found by Apollo, god of light, music, prophecy, and healing, who raised him as his own. And here the story turns on its axis. The creature who belonged nowhere became the teacher of everyone. In a cave on Mount Pelion, Chiron schooled the greatest heroes of the age, Achilles, Jason, and one student who matters most to where we're going, Asclepius, who became the god of medicine itself. Then, the second wound. In the chaos of a battle, his friend Heracles loosed an arrow tipped with the Hydra's venom, and it struck Chiron by accident. Not aimed at him, not earned, not deserved. It simply happened. Sit with that detail, because it's yours too. The deepest wounds are so often the ones we never invited. For anyone else, death. But Chiron was immortal. He could not die, and the venom meant he could not heal. So he lived on in pain that would neither end nor resolve, and he poured himself into every healing art the world possessed, searching for a cure he never found. He became the wounded healer, able to mend everyone except himself. And the ending is the key to your 50th year. Prometheus, who stole fire for humanity, hung chained to a rock, tortured daily, forever. Zeus had decreed only one ransom. An immortal must freely give up immortality in his place. No god would. Why would they? Chiron did. He looked at his endless, useless suffering and said, "If my pain can buy another's freedom, it finally has meaning." He gave away the very thing that kept him suffering, and in that act was himself set free. Zeus raised him into the stars. The wound was never cured, it was transformed. The moment it turned outward and became a gift. Hold on to that. It is the entire mechanism of what happens to you at 50. Now look up, because the sky tells the same story twice. Chiron, the celestial body, orbits between Saturn and Uranus, and in astrology, that location is the meaning. Saturn is the last planet visible to the naked eye, the boundary of the known world. Structure, time, limits, everything we can see and touch and prove. Uranus lies beyond sight, the invisible, the awakener, the lightning bolt of everything we haven't yet imagined. And Chiron rides the gap between them, the bridge between the known and the unknown, between the world we built and the world that's calling. If you read tarot, you already know this geography. Saturn belongs to the world, card 21, the final card, the completed dance, everything mastered and bounded. And Uranus, by most modern readings, is the Fool, card 0, the first step off the cliff into the unknown, the end of the deck and its beginning, standing back to back. So what lives between the world and the Fool? What carries us from everything we've completed to everything we haven't yet dared? The wounded healer, the bridge. And if Chiron carried a card of his own, it might well be temperance, the winged figure pouring water between two vessels, blending two natures into one medicine, one foot on earth and one in water. The card of the alchemist. Tradition gives temperance to Sagittarius, the centaur archer. The sky keeps drawing the same picture. One more turn of the same wheel. Chiron's greatest student, Asclepius, the healer he trained. Asclepius stands in our sky tonight as Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, the famous 13th constellation resting on the zodiac's edge between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And by some ancient tellings, Chiron himself is the constellation Centaurus, by others Sagittarius. Teacher and student woven into the stars within sight of each other, the healing lineage written across the night sky. Even in the heavens, Chiron doesn't fit a single category. Of course he doesn't. He never did. That is the teaching. And one last fact for the part of you that likes its data. Chiron wasn't discovered until the 1st of November 1977. Charles Kowal, Palomar Observatory. Astronomers couldn't classify it, comet or asteroid. They finally named it the first of an entirely new class, a centaur. And consider the timing. The late 70s, therapy entering the mainstream, the holistic healing movement being born, Jung's phrase, the wounded healer, entering the culture's vocabulary. In astrology, we hold that nothing is discovered until the collective is ready for what it carries. The wound was given its name, right as your generation was carrying it toward 50. You're among the first generations in history to reach this return with the map already drawn. Chiron takes about 50 years to circle the Sun, but unevenly. Its elliptical orbit lingers up to 8 or 9 years in one sign and sweeps through another in 2, which means everyone born within a span of years shares the same Chiron sign. The wound is generational. Your whole age group carries the same ache under different lives. And here is where this video stops being history and becomes you. Because if you're watching this in your late 40s or around 50, you almost certainly belong to one of 2 generations. Born roughly 1968 to 1977, Chiron in Aries, the wound of identity, of the right to exist as yourself, a generation that grew up feeling somewhere underneath everything. Am I allowed to take up space? Am I allowed to want what I want, be what I am? Many of you became chameleons, brilliant at being whoever the room required, exhausted by it. Your Chiron return is happening right now. Chiron has been moving through Aries since 2018 and is completing that passage. And the homecoming for your generation is exactly this, the end of asking permission. The self you postponed is the gift you now hand to everyone still postponing theirs. Born roughly 1976 to 1984, Chiron in Taurus, the wound of worth, of safety, the body, enoughness. A generation that learned early that security can vanish and spent decades either grasping for solid ground or believing they didn't deserve it. The quiet voice underneath, am I worth keeping? Chiron enters Taurus next. Your returns begin as it does and run through the years ahead. And your homecoming is the discovery that worth was never something to earn. It was the ground you were standing on the whole time. The sign is the generation's wound. The house, where that sign falls in your own birth chart, is your personal doorway to it. Same wound, different room of the house. Carried in the first house, it lives in the body and the face you show the world. In the 4th, it's family and belonging. In the 7th, every relationship becomes the classroom. In the 10th, the career carries it. 12 houses, 12 rooms. 1 wound and 1 homecoming. If you know your chart, find Chiron's house. That room is where the lights are about to come on. So Chiron comes home, back to the exact degree it held at your birth, somewhere between 49 and 51. And let's be honest about why the world calls it a crisis, because from the outside it can look like one. The career that took 30 years to build suddenly feels like a costume. Settled relationships start asking unsettled questions. The body changes, the parents age, the children leave, and underneath it all, a voice you haven't heard since childhood asks, was any of this actually mine? The crisis story says you're falling apart. Distract yourself, buy something, become someone younger. But watch what's actually shaking. Every structure that trembles is one you built around the wound, to hide it, to compensate for it, to prove it wrong. Like a tree grown around a fence post, your life took its shape around something that was never you. Chiron's return doesn't attack your life, it turns the lights on, and you finally see which parts you chose and which parts the wound chose for you. That's not a crisis, that's the first honest inventory of your existence. Here's the part no one tells you. The first 50 years were not wasted. They were the apprenticeship. Remember the myth. Chiron never found his own cure, and because of that, he went deeper into the healing arts than anyone alive. He couldn't heal himself, so he learned to heal everyone else. You've been doing the same thing without knowing it. Every year you spent circling your wound, feeling what it does to your choices, your fears, the rooms you wouldn't enter, you were gathering exact knowledge of how it works. Think of who actually helps people. The counselor who survived it, the teacher who once couldn't learn it, the friend whose presence steadies you because they stood where you stand and stayed. None of them read it in a book. The wound becomes credentials, the scar becomes a map, and at the Chiron return, the apprenticeship ends and the question quietly changes from "Why did this happen to me?" to "Who can I now help because it did?" So what does it feel like when you stop fighting it? Like coming home to a house you'd forgotten you owned. The exhausting project of being someone else. Over. The silent apology for your own nature withdrawn. The parts of yourself you exiled at 7, at 15, at 30, arriving at the door. And you find, to your astonishment, you're glad to see them. People who move through this consciously say the same thing, almost word for word. I feel more myself than I have since I was a child. Not younger, more real. That's why the sports car never works. It tries to go back. The return isn't behind you. Home is underneath you. It's been waiting under everything you built on top of it. And remember how the myth ends. The wound was never cured, it was given away. Chiron released his grip on immortal suffering and traded it for another's freedom. And that trade freed them both. Lived inward, the wound is pain. Turned outward, it is medicine. The healing you could never give yourself becomes real the instant you offer it to someone else. If you're approaching this return or standing inside it, meet it like this. Stop calling it a crisis. Language is a spell. Name it a homecoming and your whole relationship to it changes. Let what's dissolving dissolve. What shakes now was built by the wound. Grieve it. Grief is allowed at a homecoming. But don't rebuild it. Ask the wound what it taught you. 50 years of living it means you hold a mastery you've never named. Name it. Find your generation. The people born within a few years of you carry the same Chiron sign, the same wound in different houses. Speak with them. The ache gets lighter the moment it's recognized as shared. And look for the ones standing where you used to stand. They're already around you. Younger, mid-wound, lost in territory you have fully mapped. The gift completes itself the moment it's given. Zeus didn't put Chiron in the stars for enduring his pain. He put him there for what he did with it. In 1977, the sky finally gave the wound its name, just in time for you. And now, 50 years after your first breath, the wounded healer completes his long ellipse, across the bridge between the world you know and the one that's calling. Through every year you carried what you carried, not knowing you were being trained by it. He's home. And so, finally, are you. The crisis was never real. It was the sound of the door opening. What are you ready to begin right now? Tell us below. Share your Chiron sign, Aries or Taurus or wherever yours lives. And what's coming home in you? Someone in your generation is reading the comments, standing exactly where you stand. This is the first in our series on the great returns of the second half of life. Next, the second Saturn return, around 58, when the god of time himself, Chiron's own father, comes back to ask what you're ready to build with everything Chiron gave you. Subscribe so it finds you when it arrives. The lighthouse is here to help you navigate the way.